Well, hello, devs, and welcome to this episode of POPcode Maker Project Oriented Programming course. It's called Python Code Course, and this is going to be our fourth project. I know last time I kind of mixed up the project numbers and I said it was the fourth when it was really the third. So this is really the fourth. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can the see the code. Actually, this time I'm going to actually start with what the code is going to look like. So when we run it, this is going to be our widget screen. So I know it looks a little bit cluttered, but it shows all the different widgets that we are learning. So this is the capstone project. Some of them we haven't done, like we have the entry widget, we have label widgets, and there's a few other things that we're covering. We have buttons, the submit button, the finish button, delete student, update student, exit button. Those things you should already know from projects 1, 2, and 3. But this fourth project is going to also include some frames and some sliders and the option buttons called radio buttons. We're going to have check boxes and also a menu, an option menu. So those widgets are new to this project, but this is going to be kind of like our basic project capstone. And so just stay tuned and we're going to get into it right now. All right. So let me go ahead and share my code with you. It's a little bit busy, but let's go ahead and do this. I have two open. All right, so much going on. So let's go to the top because it is jam-packed with stuff to do. Okay, and this time I wanted to give you an introduction to our SQLite. So we're doing some database management in this project. I know this is jam-packed. So this is going to take over the course maybe 2 weeks for the live sessions if you're taking the live sessions, or if you need to watch and rewind and watch again, feel free to do that. But this is going to be maybe a longer than usual video that I will do. So here we go. So line 1, we're importing SQLite 3. And SQLite 3 is the built-in module for Python. So Python allows us to do some simple, basic queries and things like that for database management. And you're going to see a lot more about it. So we definitely have to import that module to use the database tools. And we're importing to Kinter because that's going to be our graphical user interface, our GUI for this project. Then from Kinter, we're going to import everything. Like I said, that underline squiggly means that we're not using everything within Kinter. We're just using some of the features in there. From Kinter, we're going to import the message box. We're going to import the file dialog. And also we're going to import scale. That's where we use the sliders, okay? So those are the 3 ones that I explicitly defined. But other than that, everything else is going to be captured under line 3. All right. So, and then also line 6, you should be familiar from the last project, the image TK. And the image in pillow is from basically an offset of the pill library or module. Okay, line 9. Let's go ahead and go down here. Line 9 is basically setting up the screen. You know, we have the main screen, the main window, basically, of the module that we're using of the app. And the main screen we'll call tkinter.tk. That's what's on line 10. And then line 11, we put a title on it. So this is, I call it Widgets tutorial. Um, you can call it anything. So later on, I might have you change that as an exercise if you want to change the name of it. Then icon bitmap, we use the icon image. And I'm using fully qualified names here, mainly because I don't want any misconceptions about where this file is located at and if it can't find it. So that's just so I don't have to use try catches and all that stuff, just in case it can't find that image file. So I definitely use the, okay, and so let me see if I think what I can do is say it's into Quizbit. So it's in the folder to Quizbit. See, so I'm not even in the same folder, but I'm using this icon image. See, it's inside a different folder. So that's why I use it fully qualified. It doesn't have to be in the same folder. So because I use a full qualified name, it's gonna go find it where it's at. Okay, and so icon image.ico is the little icon with the POPcode maker logo, and so it's referencing that. And when it goes to do this main screen.icon bitmap function, okay, and that's going to be that image on the left hand side. And I think I mentioned that before, but I just wanted to go ahead and make that a point again this time, so you know if you want to add your own little image to it, you can do that. And it has to be a ICO. It could be like a 64 by 64 pixel photo and things like that. There are ways that you can convert your photos to ICO. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. Okay. And I think we can go back to our code. And so the next thing that we do is configure the background. I made the background gray. I could have made it anything. I could have kept it, could have made it white or whatever have you. But that's the color that I chose for the background image. Then line 15, we have some global variables. So I'm going to define some global variables. And notice I did that the same thing last time. I set up my screen and I define the global variables and I do my function definitions. It's basically the same structure every single time, right? And we'll just go right along there. Now the only difference here, after we've set up student options, which is a list, you see the open and close bracket means I'm defining an empty list, which I'm going to populate later. I just wanted to set it up, define it, so that I can start adding to student options later. And then I have an SQL DB. That is a connection to our database. Okay. Then control is a cursor. Oh boy. So let me just give this a little comment to say I am setting up the database. Okay, so every database that we set up, we can give it a name, which in my case on line 19, I say SQL underscore DB. And we reference it using SQL Lite 3. That's what we imported. and we say dot, that's our dot notation to say we're accessing something within SQLite 3. And there's a function or method or something like that called connect. And within connect, we just have to give the name of the database that we're going to be using. And if for some reason it's not defined, it's going to set it up for us. So if users.db is not in anywhere, it's going to go ahead and initialize a database for us. So then we control, we named the cursor control. I named the cursor control. And so we will have a cursor which kind of helps you get ready to execute your queries. Okay, so that's kind of like where we're at in the database. Okay, so where are we in the database? Here on line 3, we're going to create the database within the database using the control cursor. So do we create the database here? No, we're not creating the database. We're going to create a query because we already created the table. And that's the thing I will cover in the book and in the live course, how we created the table. Right now, we're just using the database and the table that's already been set up. Okay, so we do execute. That is a function that allows us to put in an actual SQL statement. Okay, SQL statement. So if you don't know anything about query languages like MySQL or other SQL like MongoDB or what's the other one by Microsoft? There's other ones anyway. So they base it off of SQL language. SQL managers have different syntax, kind of close. Most of them are pretty much the same, but maybe have a few differences. So I'm giving you the code base already, so you don't have to think about how to set this up. So you already have it set up. And so that's a great thing, like I said, about having a code base, is that you don't have to worry about like having everything fail on you when you're trying to use it for the first time, yada, yada, yada. We don't want you to have to go through that. So set up working code, let you see it, see the syntax, see how to use it so that you can learn from a working model. Okay. All right, so select OID star from students. Okay, so students is a table, is the name of the table. And we have some keywords that we have in all caps. So select is a way that we query a database to get some information. So we want to select the OID, which is the organizational ID or the identifier for the things inside of students, the actual records. Okay. All right, we want to know what their ID is. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, however it was set up, like it's the automatic number that's generated for each student that's entered into the database. Okay, comma, star. Star means everything. Whenever you see star, usually it's like a wild card or something to say take on everything. Just like when we import the star, when we're importing everything, it's just a common symbol that we use to indicate everything, all options. So that little line is going to get all of the data, all of the records from students. So from is the keyword saying where we're getting it from. So we need the select keyword and we need the from, and together we tell it what we want. We want the OID and all the different columns inside that table. All right, line 24, entries equals control dot fetch all. Okay, so it seems kind of redundant, right? So we're at the cursor, we say execute select all, but what we need to do, we want to fetch everything that we just executed. We just executed, so we want to fetch it. We want to get it and assign it to entries. So everything we just, just had spill out, and we want to go ahead and at the cursor fetch it and put it into entries. And how is it going to put it? It's going to put it in like a list. So as you can see on line 25, we've already done for loops like we did in our last project. So this for loop is going to go through the entries. So we have defined entries as all the records in students. And so we're going to take an entry that's going to be the information on each line of entries, or each, if it's a list, then it's each element of entries. So I'm going to go down that entries, and we're going to get each entry. We're going to add it to student options. Okay, what are we doing here? So student options is going to be all the students. Those are our options. Those are going to be the options that we have as far as what students we're going to choose in our drop down, in our list of options, all that. Okay. So you'll see that soon as we go along a little further. Okay. After we've done everything we need to do with this query, we're going to commit any changes that we did, and then we're going to close the database. Notice that I'm referencing SQLDB every time I call one of these functions. So commit is a function, commit the current transaction, everything that we did. Our transaction was to execute the select statement and to fetch all. Okay, and then we committed that, and then we close the database. Okay, close the connection. All right, that's pretty much it. Now, after we did that, we're going to set up some other global variables. So we have a string var. I don't know if you remember string var, but string var is one of those special type of string variables for Tkinter widgets. And that string var we have already initialized. Okay, so we need to define some more variables. After we've set that up, and the reason being is that because we're going to use student options, so that's the reason why we did all that stuff with the database, because once we get done with the database, now we have to set up our widgets that are going to be showing up. Okay, so now we can do the rest of the variables. Rest of the variable definitions start with student clicked. Okay, so we're going to be clicking on a student, right? So student that got clicked, we're going to have a whole bunch of options, but the very first option is going to be the default. So this main screen is where I'm going to put the string variable. And then this student options 0 is the 0th element of student options, like the very first student option. That's going to be the default. So I'm setting up the default. And then I have an empty list called submissions. I have a list for lunch. I have a lunch list. So by default, it's no cheese, no peppers, no mushrooms, and no tomatoes. And then normally we've been doing empty lists, right? So this is a little bit different. We're starting off with a list defined, and then you're gonna see we're gonna change those as we go, or we're gonna use the defaults if a certain condition is not met. All right, then we have a rate num, which is a string variable, a year num, also string var, has cheese, int var, has peppers, int var, has mushrooms, int var, has tomatoes, int var, and toppings, string var. Okay. All right. And then we have entry clicked, which is, oh, entree, sorry. Two E's is entree. So entree click. So it sounds like we're going to have another option menu for lunch. Okay, so we're going to have some options for lunch. And so the entree that gets clicked, we're going to start off with pizza as the default, and it's going to be on the main screen. All right. And the next thing we do is student clicked the option. Hold up. Do we have it twice? Student click string var. I think I have it listed twice. Apparently it didn't give me it didn't give me an error. Okay. Excuse me. So I think we can take this out because student click is showing up twice. If I get an error message now, then that's not good. All right. So we define photo. Photo is an image. So we're opening an image file using the pillow and its Pi logo. So it's just, that's the image that we're using to display in our widget. And then we're gonna use this variable called toggle, which is equal to true. Let's just put that up here with the other variables. Okay. All right, so toggle equals true. Okay, this is the first time we've actually used a Boolean variable. Usually we use integers and strings, but this is the first time. So the default value for toggle is equal to true. We could have used false, but we're going to find out why we set it equal to true in a minute. All right. All right. So, and the great thing about Python is that I didn't have to define the data type beforehand. All I have to say, okay, here's the value of this variable. You know what I'm saying? In other languages like Java, for example, you have to say what type it is. Like you would have to say Boolean or bool, and then the name of the function, and then have the equal sign, and then tell what the value is. So this is a little bit different in that you don't necessarily have to say what kind of data type it is for you to define it. Okay, so our very first function definition is here. So we're going to define function for the clicking of the button. Okay. All right, so it looks like this is start button. What happens when we hit the start button? So there's a start button. Let's see what we said with the start button is a global variable. Well, I'm not sure. Now it says global. So if we make it global, that means it can be accessed outside. Here we have an if statement with toggle. Oh, that's that Boolean variable that we defined earlier. Okay, so line 51, we said if toggle So why didn't we say like something less than or greater than or something like that? Because it has a true or false value. So the condition is wrapped up in the variable itself. I'm going to let that marinate for a second, because a lot of times you will have in an if statement, you'll have trying to compare two things. And if it comes out true, then you do this. Otherwise, do that, right? So with this one, we're just going back and forth between true and false. Okay, so that's what it means to like toggle, to go back and forth between two things. So it started out true, but once we toggle, it's gonna go to false. And then we toggle again. Oh, well, it's false. So if it's not toggle, we're gonna go down here to change it back to true. Okay, so it's going back and forth, back and forth. If it's true, if it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. Back and forth, back and forth. And so what is it going back and forth between? Okay, this button that we defined called start button. And start button was a response to the start button. So down below, when we see the start button, we're going to see what it started as. But this is a change in the start button. So when you click on the start button, you get a thank you. And if you click on it again, what happens? It still says thank you, but it's going to go between background of black and foreground of white. Background of white, foreground of black. So it's kind of like just flipping, like flipping the on and off switch. Okay, so that's just a demonstration of what you can do as far as toggling between two things and using a Boolean value. Okay, all right, so we didn't talk about that. So something new that we're learning about Booleans. All right, then we're going to open up the connection again. Okay. We're opening up the connection within the function. Okay. All right. So notice how this is indented. So we're opening up the connection, and what we're doing is we are fetching everything from students. And what are we doing here? We are going to do a fetch all. We have an entry string. We initialize to be nothing inside, and then we keep on adding. So what we're doing is we're adding all of our entries, all of our students we're putting in a string with a \n. Okay, that's different. I don't think we've actually used an escape character. We have used the str, which is a way to basically change the data type of whatever's in parentheses. The str stands for string. So we're creating a new string object from the given object. So whatever entry is, now it's a string. Okay. So just in case it wasn't a string, because entry might be a string, which I think it is, or it's a list, something like that. So entry is going to be one of the elements in entries. It's going to be inside of the fetch all command that we call. And we're going to add an escape character. The \n means go to a new line. So we're hitting a new line after each entry. Okay. And on line 67, we set up a label. We didn't even name the label. We don't have to. So we defined what we did. We just made a label pop up on the grid at row 14, column 1. Okay, we're gonna. I showed you the prototype, so we're gonna play around with the locations and different things like that, and what we do with the widgets. But for right now, we did a dot grid. Normally, we do this in 2 lines, right? We give it a name. We give the label a name. We tell it where we want to put it, and then anything else, any other attributes. The only attribute here for this label is text entry string. Entry string is this big long string, or this big long list of all the students. So you see that? So the reason why we opened up the database and pulled all the students was so that we can show all the students. Does that make sense? So we did all of that so that we can show all the students when this thing gets clicked. Okie dokie. So now we see we put the list on the grid at 14, comma, column 1. All right, so then we update the database and close it. So all we do is commit and close. All right, that's the end of that function. Now we have a function called show entries on line 73. Line 73, show entries, we're going to basically show everything that's in the database. We're doing it again, just like we had before. And then we commit and close. Then we are deleting the entry. So this is the way that we delete an entry. So we open up the database, same like we did before. These 2 lines are repeats. Okay, and then ID num is a student clicked dot get. Okay, so whatever student was clicked, we're gonna get that student, and we're gonna split up that entry wherever it's separated by commas, and then we're gonna get that very first one and show 1 through to the end. Okay, so what that 1 colon means is that we're going to start with the first element and go all the way to the end. The colon means go to the end. If you were to put like 3, so it goes from the first element to the third element, not including the third. But when we leave it blank like that without any ending, that means go all the way to the end. Okay. Then this is our delete statement. This is how we tell SQLite that we want to delete from a table. The name of our table is students, and we're deleting from it where the OID. So we need the OID. So we got the OID from the ID num. Okay, so that's how we figured out what the OID is. And so once we have the statement, we have to add on to it the ID num. We can't just put ID num in there because this is an SQL statement that does not get seen in the program. That's why you have to do it separately. It's kind of like concatenation. So concatenation is where you take a string and you put it with another thing. Well, that other thing is a string. So we're putting 2 strings together to make our query. Okay, so 2 strings together to make the query. That is what's going to be executed so that we can delete the student that was selected. Okay, so delete entry is the response to the delete button being clicked, delete student. And so we'll see that happening. And the student that was clicked, that's the one that's going to get deleted when we hit that delete button. Okay. Then we update the database and close it. So these are repeats. The same thing that we did before. So don't be confused or feel like if I'm going too fast, because I've pretty much already done these two, and I did 93 and 94 already. So that's why I'm not specifically going through it and talking about it. All right. Because if I sat there and talked about every single line like that, then it'll be a long video. All right, so let's go ahead and get the line 104. Update an email entry. So now we're updating. So we're going through all the different queries that we can do to the database. So we've already deleted. Now we're about to update. And before we selected all of them, we grabbed all of them so we can see them, print them out, and stuff like that on the screen. But now we're updating, and basically we say update screen equals to Kinser TK. Oh, to Kinser TK, that was the one that we used to set up our main screen. So we must be setting up a new screen, a new window. So now we're going to have a window pop up from the main window. Nice. So that's something new that we haven't done before. And I want you to know that you have that capability to open up a window from a window. Okay. All right. So we called it update screen, and we titled it update student email. So what this is going to do when we want to update, basically it's just going to allow you to update the email for that student that was selected, right? So we're going to update the screen. We're going to go to the update screen, and it's going to be a 200 by 200 window. So it has its own attributes. It has its own, this one has a background color of purple. Okay, so it's going to be a cute little window that we open up to change the email. All right, so we go user label. Okay. And the label is going to be update screen. So we got to make sure that we say update screen where we want to put it. We don't want it on the main screen. We want it on the update screen. So that's why we definitely have to use that where location. Then we'll say text equals new email. I can make it a capital N, make it look a little nicer. So to tell it, okay, I want the new email. So that's the user label. And oh, we're doing something different. Pack. Pack is another way of putting it on the screen instead of grid. Okay, there was a grid layout, now there's a pack layout. So there's other layouts, but we won't be getting into that in this beginning module. We'll do it later in another module. Okay, and so new email is the entry widget on the update screen with a border width of 5. And then we're going to take that new email, we're going to pack it onto the screen. Okay, so packing just means like push it on there, put it in the best location in the next location. It does, you know, kind of in order. So kind of like pushing it on to like a stack. So we call it a pack. All right, next. On line 119, we have a function definition to update the email. Okay, so this is where we're going to call. Okay, so this is where we're going to call the update function. So we actually have a function inside of function. The update email global user label is using this user label, and then the SQL DB is the SQL3.connect. So these two we've done before. And ID num, we're going to get that from what they clicked, the option that they chose, and we're just picking that very first one. It's also repeated information. And then we're going to say control.execute. So here is the line. We use this quote, quote, quote whenever we're doing a multi-line comment or string. Okay, so this is a multi-line string, and it goes from here to here. So from line 126 all the way to line 129. So whenever we know we're going to be doing like a whole bunch of stuff, we use quote, quote, quote. And so inside there, we're going to use the update. And the update is email, which we use a colon email to identify our, our second function, or in a collection. Well, a collection is within these curly braces, and that collection is called a dictionary. So we haven't done that before. We have a dictionary, and that dictionary uses a key value pair. So here's the key called email. That's same as this email on line 128. And then we're going to get the new email from that new email label that we defined earlier. Okay, so we're going to get that label and get that from the entry widget, I should say. We'll get that new email and we'll assign it into this email in the students. So what I didn't say is that we use the keyword update and we use the keyword set. And that allows us to set the value of the email in students, where the OID is ID num. Okay, so we're using the ID num for that student, and we are changing the email to be whatever was put in there into that entry widget. Okay, all right. Now on line 136, we're going to update the database and close it, same like we've done before. And then we're going to destroy that. We're going to close that screen out using the destroy command. Okay. All right. So after we've done that, we're going to do a save button. The save button is also within this update screen. Okay. It's in the update. I'm sorry, update. Where am I? It's within the update screen. The save button is in the update screen within this update email definition. Not within it, sorry, because it's unindented. It's within the update entry definition. Okay, so you have to pay attention to the indents. I just almost confused myself. So this, since it's unindented, it's not within this function definition. It's out here in line with this definition, with this update entry definition. Okay. All right. Hope I didn't confuse you too bad. But this save button is a button in the update screen or on the update screen, and it's called save. And basically it calls update email. All right. And then we just pack it on the screen. So update email is within our function update entry. All right. Then we have submit function or submit action function. And it's also going to access the database using the connect and cursor. And then we're going to insert a new student. So the submit action means that we're submitting a new student into our database. And we're using an insert query, insert into. So our keyword is insert into. So we use insert into to say, hey, I want to insert into this table called students. And the values is going to be the name and the email. And here we are defining another dictionary with key value pairs. So this time we have two of them, right? We have the name, which is going to come from whatever was put in from the user entry entry widget, and then the email, it comes from the email entry label widget. Entry widget. Okay, that's a tongue twister. Say that 5 times fast. So I've set this up to get the user entry and the email entry and put it into the database. We commit the changes and then we close. All right, moving right along. We have a submit button, which we configure as success. Once the submit button is pressed, right? Once the submit button is pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to configure the button. So on the button, it used to say submit. Now it's going to say success. So you didn't know you could change the text on it after it's already been set up. But here it is. We can configure a button to say something else after it's pressed. And this is what we did. We changed the background to light blue, and we also changed the foreground to white. All right, so those are new configurations for our previously defined submit button. Okay, next we have submissions. Now, submissions we're going to append to. Submission, remember, was a list that we defined earlier, and we said, oh yeah, we want to put some stuff in there in a list later. So now here it is. We are appending to submissions. We are adding it to a list called submissions. And what's in that list is the user entry and the email entry. So we're putting it as a dictionary. Okay, notice the colon in between. That means, and the brackets, that means it is a dictionary with key value pairs. Well, Stacy, hold up. If it's a key value pair, how come they don't have quotes? Okay, well, because they're already strings. So this get and this get are already strings, and they're variable names, so they don't need quotes around them. Only when you explicitly say something do you need quotes around it. But this is not explicit. This is actually a variable name. Okay? So that's why that is. Okay, so we're going to have submit text equals hi, and then the username and the email. So that's kind of like just to reiterate what they put in, right? Just to say, okay, we know you put this in. So we're going to grab that information and put it on the screen on the grid, row 3, column 1, with a pad wide 10. And that's going to go on the main screen with submit text and that font 22. It's going to be pretty big. It's going to be like, hi, user. So basically, we're going to say hi to the user. And user, we're going to delete what was put in. We're going to delete the email that was put in, just so it can start fresh, right? So the next person, or you can submit the next user. If you want to keep on adding users, you can do that. So after it's submitted, It adds it, it says hey, and then it deletes what was inserted or inputted. Okay, that was a lot done, but very good. Show results of the checking radio button with a message box. Okay, so now we have a radio buttons and a message box. So a message box is like a pop-up. And so that's why we imported the message box, because we're going to use message box that is something already defined in Tkinter module. And there's a thing called show info. So show info is called, and we're going to say it's result. That's the title of our message box, believe it or not. So we're going to call it result. And then we're going to say, that's correct. Here we go. We have another escape character. Remember earlier we did \n means start a new line. But now \quote means I want you to ignore the fact that it's a quote, because it's an actual quote in the string itself. Okay, so if I didn't put that \, it would think that was the end of the quote from the one that was before the T. But since I have more to say with the S, comma, and correct and things, I have to put that \. I have to put an escape character so it knows I have more to say. So it's going to ignore, well, not really ignore, because it's going to actually put it into the string, but it just allows you to add on more text within the same quote with that quote inserted into your string. Okay, we do that twice. That's not correct. If it's not correct. So if the value is quotes, so basically we're going to get that value, whatever value that they chose. If the value is quotes, that's the correct answer. And we're going to say that's correct. Otherwise, that's the else part. If it's not quotes, then it's going to say that's not right. So this is just a little message box that pops up and allows you to do that. Okay, to tell you if you were right or wrong. And we're going to do more with that in another module. But that's just kind of like a little introduction to that widget, to the message box. Okay, use a dialog box to get the file name of the photo to use. Okay, so that's something we haven't done before. We are going to use a dialog box, use the file dialog, and we're going to ask to open a file. So we're going to do some file management here. A new type of file management to where we can open up a system window. So it causes the open file window to pop up. You know how if you're on your own computer and you want to open up a file, you click on your file manager and things like that, and then you navigate to the file that you want to open or whatever you want to do with it, edit or whatever. Well, this is going to be an opportunity for you to open up a file or get a file. So this is very good, very good tool that I'm just introducing you to. So on line 180, open frame icon. So it's going to open up file dialog dot ask open file name with an attribute of initial directory. So that's just going to be the home directory. It's going to default to the home directory. That's what that slash means. And the title of that window is going to be choose a photo. Okay, so you didn't know, you can change the name of our open file. But we're going to ask the user to choose a photo. We don't want them to just pick any old file. This is going to be the file of the photo that's going to be used. Okay. All right. And so let's do open label. The label is basically going to go on open frame. But where's open frame? Open frame is another place, another frame, and or another window. And the text is going to be open frame icon. So that's the one we grabbed. So open frame icon, which we put here as a text, it must be a string if that could be a text. It must, open frame icon must be the actual file name. So that file dialog.ask open file name is going to return, so it's a function that returns the actual name of the file. Okay, so it returns the file and assigns it to open frame icon. So open frame icon is a text that's assigned to the label. So all of this is just going to show us what the name of the file that was selected. Okay, so that's what all that means. And we're going to pack it onto the open label screen. Open label is going to go into open frame. Okay. All right. We haven't really seen where open frame is located, but I'm guessing it's down below within our widget definitions. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Keep an open mind, because open frame, we've never seen that before, right? We've seen main screen, and we've seen update screen or update window or whatever, but we haven't seen open frame yet. So apparently it's down below in future line of code. This is just a function definition. This does not get executed until it is called. So that's why we can have something that's not defined above its definition. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. Open label dot pack. So we're packing open label onto the screen. Also, we are going to put an image into the variable name picture. So open frame icon. So the actual file name, we're gonna put it and open it. Hopefully it was a picture. Hopefully they picked out a picture, right? And if they pick out a picture, then we're gonna be able to open it. And we're gonna put it in open frame. Okay, so apparently we got a frame set up where we're gonna put this picture at. It's not gonna go, well, I think open frame is a label frame, so you'll see in a minute. And the width is 200 and the height is 200. Okay, and we're gonna pack it. Oh, we're gonna forget it. We're gonna forget that we packed it. We're gonna take it off of there and then pack it. Okay, that's different. So we can forget that we packed it, remove it, and then pack it on there. All right, next we have function to assign a value to the rate num based on the slider. So we got a slider that we want to select or assign a value to, and it's called get rating. So global rate num, that's that global variable called rate num, and we're going to set it to y.get. So whenever we click get whatever button that has the command get rating, it's going to set the rating to y.get. Okay, that was a mouthful. So wide must be a widget that allows you to get its information. Okay, so wide is a widget that allows you to get its information. Wide, we're going to see later on, is our horizontal or a wide slider, horizontal slider. So it goes from left to right. And then notice here on line 195, tall. That's going to be the tall slider. I know it's kind of weird naming convention, but I mean, you could have said horizontal and vertical, but those are a little longer. So I just said wide and tall. All right. All right. So then on line 193, get year. So we call it a year. I mean, it could be anything, any series of numbers, but we call it year num as a global variable. And year num is going to be set once we change the number on the slider. So once the user slides it and sets it to a location, we're going to set the value into year num. All right. Next, we're going to go to define get lunch. It's time for lunch. Oh, it's time for lunch for real. Get lunch has a global lunch. Remember, we defined the lunch variable, and that was a list with all the different options that we had as default. But when we order, we're going to say your lunch comes with, so by default, it always comes with sauce. And then whatever other toppings that you selected. So if you selected has cheese, which is one of those options, or like the check boxes, if you select it has cheese, then they're going to get that. And if it's equal to 1, then order plus equals cheese. So order is the string. This string that we started to define within our variable. So it's not even a global variable, it's just a local variable, and it changes depending on what was ordered. So basically, depending on what was checked, so we're going to check to see if it has cheese, then we'll add that. If it has peppers, then we'll add peppers. If it has mushrooms, then we're going to say mushrooms at the end of our string. All these are concatenations of different parts of the order. Then if it has tomatoes, then we're going to add tomatoes at the end. Otherwise, we're just going to keep the default. Remember the defaults that were up there? So lunch 3 is a default for the fourth thing, which said no tomatoes. So by default, we have none of that stuff that we're not gonna have those toppings. Otherwise, we are gonna put those toppings on there. Make sense? All right. Now, line 217. I mean, we're doing great. We're on 217, and lunch label is a label that's on the main screen, and the text variable is toppings. Remember, we set up toppings to be a string var. Okay. So toppings is going to be set to order. So we're basically going to put the whole order into toppings. So basically, we're just showing the whole order in the lunch label grid. On the grid at row 12, column 0. So basically, we just tell them what they ordered. Okay, once they make all their selections and they hit the button that has the command get lunch, then it's going to display the lunch label with all their toppings. Okay. All right. So that's that. And I think we're almost done, guys. Label widgets. So we're defining some label widgets. We're defining an icon for our image. And then we're doing a welcome label. That's that label at the top of our screen that says welcome to widgets. And then we have a name label widget. It says enter your name. And that's where you're going to be able to enter your name after the label in the entry field. And then the email label is enter your email text that shows up before the entry or the email entry entry widget. Sorry. Okay, so then we're going to define the frames. Okay, so this is that open frame that we're talking about. So open frame is a label frame. So we haven't done one of those type of widgets before. So basically, it is a like a little frame. You know how you put a frame around a picture? Well, basically, it's like a little section. It's a way of sectioning off the main screen or whatever screen, whatever window that you're putting it on. It's a way of um, arranging it with a nice little border around it. So here it has a title or a text and it's called select an image. And then it has padding around it, 20 in the X direction and 20 in the Y direction. And then we put it on the grid at row 1, column 0. So that's our label frame. We got two of them. The first one was select an image. That's where we're gonna put our image. Remember the image that we talked about before? So that's where we're gonna put our image on the open, inside the open frame. And then we're gonna say what symbol is used to define, oh, so that's a question. A label, oops, sorry. That's a label frame and it has a question. What symbol is used to define strings? What symbol is used to define strings? Well, what did we put here? Quotes. All right, so that's where you saw that quotes. If it's quotes, it's gonna toggle and see if it's the right answer. Okay, so it's all coming together, right? It's really kind of round robin when it comes to defining widgets and defining the functions that go with the widgets. All the definitions come first, even though you're going to use the widget, define the widgets later. I know we could have defined them afterwards, but then when you call it command, when you do the command, then it wouldn't know it should be defined first. Okay, so we got open frame, option frame. This option frame is just having a little quiz question, and that's just so you can see what frames look like. And then within the option frame, we're going to have all the different options. Yay! So that's a nice thing that we can add options. Notice that there's a button in the open frame that we put, and I'm just scrolling down a little bit so you can see option frame and option frame. So we're gonna have radio buttons in the option frames. Okay, so let's go back up to option frame. So we're defining it up here, but we're gonna add some stuff to it later. Okay, so the button widget, and the budget, I should say button widgets, because it's more than one button on this in this main screen. There's a whole bunch of them. We have the start button, the submit button, the exit button, open button, and the delete button. Now, you can let me know in the chat or let me know, you know, how I structured this code. It could have been structured a little bit different. Like it could have just been by sections, by different things that we do. Like say, group all the things for the entry of the new student. Group that all together, including all the buttons and labels and things like that. And then all the frame stuff. We'll put everything that is concerned with the frames. We can put that in the section afterwards. But I decided to structure the code like this with all the same types of widgets in one place. So just let me know in the chat. What do you think would be, or email me if you have an idea for a better structure, if you think that this is a good structure. Because as we're going along, we're going line by line, right? And so you might not know, okay, well, where did open frame come from? Like, what? What? I've never seen open frame before, so that might throw you off if you don't know. But that's the reason why we're doing this code review, so that you can see that there are ways that you can structure your code and set up your code to have different masters, like open frame and main screen, locations for the actual um, widgets to go. Where we put the map depends on where we set up our master. Okay. Okay, so we got the start button, we had the submit button, we had the exit button. I'm going through these really fast because you've seen the different attributes that we can set up. The text, the background, the command, the text, the background, command. We have pad X, pad Y that we can assign um, around the grid as well. Okay, so maybe we haven't really done column span, pad X, and pad Y on a around a button before, or I should say the grid of the button. Usually we do it on the button itself. So within the text of the button, we might add some padding. But here we're saying on the grid. So whenever we put padding around the grid elements, it's going around the actual button. So it means the spacing above and below and to both sides of the button outside of it. But if we say the button, the text, so it's around the actual text. It's the padding around the text of the button. So that's the difference. I want you to notice that I put some padding around the submit button that's outside of the grid. Okay, so that's the difference there. And then on the open frame, notice if you use one type of layout, like in the main screen, we can only use grid. Once you use a grid, you can only use grid. And then in open frame, we use a pack layout. So once you use pack, always use pack. So notice how I packed the open button that's in the open frame for choosing the photo. I packed it on there. I did not what? Grid layout. I did not do the grid layout. So because I started packing things in there, I have to keep on packing things in there. All right, but I wanted to use that. You could have used the grid within an open frame, but I wanted to show you a different layout opportunity or potential for a different layout. Okay, so that's important to note. And then we have a delete button, an update button. Those are where you can delete a student, update student. So these are usually after you've selected a student, then if you don't select a student, what happens when you click one of these buttons? The default is going to be taken, okay? The default student is going to be taken for the delete or update. So be careful. Now, one of the things that we can do with this delete button is get a confirmation. Okay, so we'll do that as an exercise. So don't worry about it now, but we'll do like a little confirmation within our delete entry. Okay. Are you sure you want to delete the student? Are you sure you want to update the student? So basically that's a confirmation text. And as long as it says, as long as you click OK, as long as the user clicks OK, then it will go ahead and do that function. Okay. Entry widgets. So we have a user entry and an email entry on the main screen. Really simple there. And then we have radio buttons, starting off with a selection equals string bar. So the selection is the variable. All right. that is going to change based on if it's checked or if it's clicked, if it's active, right? Selection is the actual value of the variable when it is checked. All right, so the value given to that variable is quotes, comma, colon, or asterisk. So those are radio buttons. And so we want to make sure that those are the different options and the possible values depending on the selection. Okay, so if it's selected, it's going to have its value. All right, and so that's why we can make that comparison in the command. That's where we use the selection. Okay, that's what we're going to do, the selection.get. Do you remember the selection.get? So we use the selection.get to get the option that was chosen to see if the answer was correct. And then this button is going into option frame, and it was getting packed in there. Okay, and this is something new that we haven't done before. It is anchor. So this is a way of justifying our text. West never eats shredded wheat. So West is, well, according to how you see me, is over to the left, right? It's to the left of the screen, so it's a left justified. So the W stands for West, and there's other ones. The N will stand for North, E will stand for East, and S stands for South. So, but East and West, right and left justified. Okay. Anchor is West. So that means left justified. Okay. The radio buttons. So they're to the left. Otherwise, it would center it by default. Okay, so here are the slider widgets called scale. One is tall and one is wide. I don't see the wide yet. Oh, there's wide down there on line 299. But let's go ahead and talk about tall. It's in the main screen and it goes from underscore. So from underscore is the name of the variable for the start of the selection. So it's an integer. So I started, since it's a year, right? We start from 2000 to 2030. So you're going to select the year option. Say, for instance, it's a credit card information that you're trying to get, the expiration or even a date of birth. You can choose from, say, for instance, you want them to be at least 18. So you would have a selection from like 2003 to the current year, which is like 2021. So you would like 2003 to 2021. So that could be a valid range. Yeah. So it depends on what you want to do. This is hard coded in there, but you can set defaults at the top when you initialize variables and then put the variables in there. However you wanted to code this, that would be better code, right? You can have a start year and end year defined at the top, and then you can put start year, end year, right? But this is just some quick code. And then we're going to say year label. That's a label that's going to put in the year and show what year was inputted. Then we have a year button. That's the one that's going to submit the year. So it's going to allow us to call the command get year. And the get year actually puts the year in there, sets the year. Okay. All right. So then after we do that, we're going to create a drop-down menu for the lunch. The lunch options is the option menu widget. and it's on the main screen, and it has entree clicked for its input. And then we have a list of different options. Our options are pizza, hamburger, or salad. And then we can have all those toppings on there. Remember, we had all those toppings. So we're going to select a lunch entree, and then we're going to select options for our toppings. And then once we submit, submit the lunch, then the get lunch is going to get called. Okay, so we have a student menu. It's another option, menu, and it has student clicked in there. Student clicked has student options. Oh, and notice that was a little bell. And we're going to stop that right now. Sorry for that interruption. Let me close that window so it doesn't come through again. And then now let's go back to that window. Okay, I think I'm still sharing. Okay. So here, student menu is another option menu with on the main screen, and it's student click. Remember, that's a string variable that changes, and it's gonna have student options. It's gonna have student options. Remember, student options is a list of all the students that we got from the database. Okay. Don't forget to put this little asterisk. This asterisk lets you know that we're picking and choosing all the options in there in a list. So it's kind of like a pointer. We didn't really talk about pointers, but it's pointing to the different elements in student options. And we are going to put it on the grid at row 7, column 3 with a power of 5. Okay, and then the wide scale, that's the other, wide. That's the other slider widget, and it goes from 0 to 100. So say it's like from 0 to 100%. Whatever application you want to use for something like that, from 0 to 100, you can use it. In our next module, we're going to see how to utilize a file as a module. So that's for later. And kind of like a little preview of what's to come. But this is our capstone project, and I'm so excited. You guys have been doing so good, and I'm so proud of my students. And we're going to move right along and say y.grid is on row 4, column 2, and that's what the location of this horizontal scale. Notice the orientation attribute is orient, and it's equal to horizontal. Okay. Did we have an orientation on our tall one? No. So notice the difference on line 281. We did not have an orientation attribute. That's because by default, by vertical slider for your entry, by default, it's vertical. Okay, so by default, it is vertical. Orientation is vertical by default. Okay, so here, since we want it to be horizontal, we want the layout to be wide, we're going to tell it, do it this way. So it's going to go from 0 to 1. Don't forget that little underscore under the from, but there's no underscore under the 2. Just the from. That's how they want it. That's how Tkinter, whoever designed Tkinter, wanted that attribute to be named. Maybe so you don't get it confused with the from keyword. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue right along. We're on line 303, devs. We are doing spectacular. Let's see how much more. Oh, not too much more. We can get through these, no problem. So this rating button is a submit rating. It's going to allow us to call the get rating function. And when we get rating, that's going to be the rating assigned to, that's going to be showing on the screen as the rating number that was selected. Okay. So next we want to create some check boxes for a pizza order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 4 check boxes. They all pretty much say the same thing, so we'll be able to get through it pretty quickly. 1 cheese, 1 pepper, 1 mushroom, 1 tomatoes. The variable is has cheese, has peppers, has mushroom, has tomatoes. And remember the has mushrooms dot get, we're going to get the value of that variable so we can determine which check button was checked. And depending on what check buttons were checked, we're going to let them be part of our lunch order. Remember, our lunch order is going to be determined by these check buttons. All right, so then we go right down the list to the lunch order. It is a button and it says order lunch. So when we hit the order lunch button, then it's going to call the function get lunch. It's in red, the background color is red. And basically it says, okay, put it on row 11, column 1, and that lunch label is going to show what all we ordered based on the get lunch function. And that's also based on all the check buttons that were checked. Or if they weren't checked, then it's going to revert to the default of no peppers, no mushrooms, no tomatoes, and so forth. Okay, so lastly, we have the query students. So this is like a quick query of all the students. It is a button, and all it does is show the entries. So all we do is click on the button that says show entries, and it's going to show all the students in the show entries function. So that's going to get all the students and put in a nice little display. And that is the end of our widgets. That was a lot. I thank you so much for watching. And stay tuned for our question and answer period. Hopefully you're able to take great notes, and we will see you in the next one.